launches FTX in 2019. And that's a crypto platform where, honestly, you can make a lot more money than just with a trading firm. So FTX quickly skyrockets in popularity. There's some of these people making hundreds of millions of dollars. People are miserable at the end of it, and nothing happens. And that was the start of my show.
So you start just doing interviews.
Success. 2 months. You're going to be making 5 figures a month. 10 months, maybe 6 figures a month. And I've done it for people before. That's the social proof. I've shown people how to do this.
Like what exactly, like what are the regulations in terms of like what you're allowed to do and donate, and how did he violate them?
So I think the big violation was you're not supposed to. Sam wanted to basically influence politics by just donating. And the idea is you donate to both sides, you can never lose, right?
Yeah.
If you have you can know their assets. So it's like a big thing recently in crypto. They'll say, hey, we're going to show you proof of reserves. What does that mean? They mean we'll show you on chain your hands in both pockets. But publicly, he's just like, he's donating to Democrats because he says, oh, I'm like this, like, I care about all these issues.
Yeah.
But it's like even more cynical than just buying one party. But even Western Union has been they've been getting kind of pinched a little bit, like, hey, you guys got to stop allowing all of this. But in crypto, because there's no, and so now it's trying to be sorted out by the guy who literally unraveled Enron. And he says, this lawyer goes, it's worse than Enron. If you're from this one, you're not okay. Or I might say, hey, like CZ has connections to China, like maybe that's a problem. Or CZ has connections to here, maybe that's a big deal. It's kind of like, okay, it's a little bit chic to be donating to Democrats. You can do that without too much, negative press. But if I'm the number 3 donor to the Republican Party, that's going to be a bad look.
Down, because it seems like they received additional scrutiny, right? Because now people are starting to look at it, and I saw that their value went down considerably.
Senator's office reached out to me. They're like, what do you think about this? And I was like, I don't know, man. You guys have to, this is y'all's thing to figure out. Ultimately, now I can just send you $100K. It's going to take me 5 minutes.
So that's why when people like kidnap people's data and things along those lines, they'd like to get paid.
Actually, campaign finance laws, I've heard, are pretty weak. I forget the name of the law, but it was passed in like the early 2000s, 2010s maybe, where it actually became very easy to donate. A service that said, you cannot move, like when I deposit with you, you're not going to touch my money. And I said, Sam, if that's true, where's the money of all these people? Ethereum, what are we tracking here? And then it goes to some mixer somewhere, and then we don't know where it goes after that.
So when Sam Bankman-Fried was working with Reg, did you interview him before the scandal?
No, not before the scandal.
So it's like as it was going down.
As it was going down, he goes on all these Twitter spaces. He doesn't want to, he's doing interviews with them to, like, if you're Alameda Research and you're funneling money through a personal investor, that I think is the problem. You do not get to that level and not know that things were wrong.
Well, reading her tweets about amphetamine use was pretty wild too. The whole scene was wild.
Now if you're some criminal, laundering money has just never been easier. Instead of taking $100,000 across the border or wiring it where it can get held up by a bank, but FTX was sort of the worst offender. Is let's say I give you a loan, Joe. So an unsecured loan would be I give you $1 million and I don't ask for anything. Change that money for some type of crypto token. There's a lot of different tokens out there. And
explain tokens, because I don't understand tokens. I know there's crypto and there's tokens. Like, what is the difference between the two?
I'll have to my feeling is offshore entities should not be they're not subject to our rules. How can you allow offshore, like, I don't know. It's
figured it out, and someone would have started dumping their coin.
Yeah, people already, I mean, even leading up, like CZ gets a lot of the credit for it, but like already, like a day before, what are you saying in the terms of service that means that I can't sue you? You have all these terms of service that basically say none of what I'm saying is true. Like they say they can get you rich in the sales pitch, and then he's one of the leaders at the NASDAQ. I mean, he was one of the go-to guys, and so you thought, well, I invest with Bernie, like I can't lose. It's like almost, betting on the house. Pilfering FTX, the customer deposits, and was using it in Alameda Research, which was his trading firm, to try to make extra money, and he lost it.
And so this is all because it's
never understood how Bernie Madoff got people, because it seems so preposterous. And then I fell for something very similar. And what I noticed with all of these things, the thread is smart thing, which is something like this happens, you shut up. You don't say anything.
Right.
And then you point at your boss. I mean, that's basically what they did.
Oof.
Which they for sure did stuff wrong to regulation for, I guess, offshore crypto exchanges, right?
And so these campaign finance, these violations,
$10 million or your data's lost forever. And you're like, call the police, and you go, hey, track this guy. And they're like, to what? To a Bitcoin wallet? Too annoying. So
we don't need that.
The famous example is like Coinbase is in America, and they have to file all these forms. They're a regulated entity. They're a publicly traded. So by the third interview, I'd studied him, and I said, okay, how do we get down to FTX's responsibility in this whole thing? And I kept coming back to, it was the terms of stuff. You're just having to trust these shady offshore entities that they're telling the truth. Binance says they're fine. They show proof of reserves, but what are their liabilities? It's sort of like hard. You kind of have to disprove every single, like there's always a new like health guy telling you that there's some new alternative discovery, whatever. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And I was like, why do they, to their other friends, they're all saying it's okay, let me put money in. And it's just a huge case study that just because other people, it's this guy who drives a Toyota. So you go like, well, why does he need to scam me if he's driving a Toyota, right? Then it's like, which Sam Bankman-Fried did. Then it's like, okay, it's inevitable. So something to understand. FTX was insolvent long before it was realized that they were insolvent, right? So, right? The inflation rate, I think, is like 75% or something like that. It's an unimaginable, it's just out of control inflation. And if you hold on to your Turkish lira, you're in for a bad time. Assets, you can check yourself. Like, I have $1 billion in USDC. Well, that's great. But it doesn't matter if I have $1 billion in crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, if I owe $2 billion.
Right.
That's money to a politician on my behalf. You're a straw donor. You're not really a donor. So Alameda was using customer funds to pay off politicians in order to try to get favorable.
Each other on amphetamines and making billions of dollars. Like, it sounds like a great story if it wasn't illegitimate.
Yeah, ultimately that's the problem. Like, Sam was just hopped up on amphetamine. I have 2 employees, and both of them are overseas. Like, one of them's in London, one of them's in Ukraine. And so for me, I have to pay them, and I have to do that token. Then you sell it off, and then the price plummets. So you thought you had a bunch of money, but actually it's worth nothing. Like, there's all these new scams that have emerged as a result of people getting interested in this idea of an alternative
analogy for losing your house.
It's funny. Yeah.
I mean, good Lord.
The idea of these mixers was you'd anonymize your transactions. So, like, let's say they're like, hey, don't work a 9-to-5 job. Like, be free like me. And I'm like, you're here on a Sunday at like 5 p.m. How free are you really? Like, you're just like, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's like people get away with it. It's just there's too many people doing it. And you'll catch some people, but ultimately a lot of people will just basically skate by, even though by all rights they should have been done. He launches Alameda Research first, which is just like this trading firm, which basically the idea here is, we have some ideas. We're going to raise a little bit of money, and we're just going to do a few transactions through your name. That just came out in a press release. It's the new charges. He was basically like they call them straw donors, because it's like, if I give money to you to give a fall for something doesn't mean you're safe. Like, you have to do, I hate to say do your own research, because that's such an overused, like, scammy phrase. It's actually such like a phrase like that, it's almost used.
Go back to making money again.
I don't think he thought he would repay everyone, but everyone thought like, oh, we'll just enter Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We'll restructure the company. We'll reopen. We'll just turn all the debt into new. Really going to sell most of our FTT that we got from that deal, and we're going to sell it. We don't know what's going on there. And all of a sudden, it starts this firestorm because people are like,
wild. The fact that they were all living together and fucking each other in this giant penthouse. This $40 billion penthouse. The things, it's insane. It's really, I almost wish
these guys basically, a lot of these people backed Sam with the highest endorsements. And so if you're just an average person, you're thinking, well, how much more due diligence can I do than all these other guys?
Crypto.
Ransomware. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. Because before it was like, okay, you need to use like Western Union or sort of one of these like these places where you can kind of send money without too much scrutiny. Or the CEO as of 2020, he hands it to this a girl he actually had a relationship with, Caroline Ellison, right? And she supposedly controlled it. He said she did everything. And it's like, well, what's fungibility mean? It means whether you were a guy withdrawing who is this degenerate day trader in Washington, and I think there was like a tweet from Sam saying like, oh, like I'll see you the next time you're in Washington or something like that. But like, it was kind of a dig because he knows CZ can't go to Washington. Like he would be really know what I was looking at the time. Then I go to college and all my friends get an MLMs, multi-level marketing, sort of like just like the like, hey, you're going to get rich. So I was always getting invited to these like get rich seminars. We don't know. I mean, there's only a few that are bigger. Like there's Binance, very opaque company. We don't exactly know.
And what has happened to Binance since FTX went?
Found out how to be successful. And if you invest with me, I'll save you time. You could do it yourself, Joe. You could do it. But what? It's going to take you 5 years. Get with me, and I'm going to shortcut your success. Yeah, Elizabeth Warren wrote a letter to them. They're being looked at much more closely. I mean, ultimately, all of these things are so opaque in the sense that and why is so much of your balance sheet made up of your own tokens? It's a big question. So one of the things that FTX had done, and a lot of companies were doing at the time, all these other wallets, that it's impossible to know which of those new wallets my dollar's from. It's like, it's just crazy. It's a crazy idea. I hate doctors so much, and it always seems to like end up with a sales pitch. Like it never was like, hey, let me just give you this free thing. It was like always like there's a catch.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, at the end when you're like ready for this thing to go down, because I know as soon as I get on, it's going to end pretty quickly after. I said, let me ask him some real hard questions. Because all these guys are like, Sam,
it wasn't a scam. I've said this before because I root for nerds to like be that successful that you just completely living outside the norms of society, just fucking
from the arms of one huckster to another. Like it's just like it's almost to something worse. He called it fiat at FTX. But it was a $10 billion hole.
What do you mean by mislabeled?
Well, it was on a spreadsheet, Joe. So he was put it on a spreadsheet for their balance sheet, and he mislabeled. He's a shark. He knows what he's doing.
What was the conflict between the two of them that led him to do that?
The conflict was, it's a great question. The conflict was ultimately that Sam was trying to get some regulations passed, and actually his whole technique of shifting the blame like onto Alameda and like I don't control Alameda. I've seen something very similar. I'm investigating this Ponzi scheme that's offshore. I just wasn't interested. I was like, that's not my life. So I always wanted to sort of, have a voice. And so I started a YouTube channel just doing random videos. Very strange. And these offshore entities were also using like U.S. branches. Like there's FTX US, which was like more regulated, but not really that regulated. It's FTX's influence went from the Bahamas reaching into the United States while technically not really being regulated by the United States.
Yeah, they were the number 2 donor to the Democratic Party.
Eventually got paid out like $2 billion.
Whoa.
Yeah. Some of it was in this FTT token, though. So they have a bunch of FTT, right? And so it's like November was when all
that and sell off all his tokens. Would they be still solvent today or still in operation today? Would they not crash, or was this
inevitably taken that? I mean, maybe some of them were taking it seriously, but not enough.
So if FTX didn't encourage regulation and CZ didn't get upset at that.
This is what was going on in crypto. They're called collateralized loans. But what FTX was doing was they were saying, hey, like, we'll take $1 million from you, but instead of giving you... I saw this, and my experiences up to that point, it kind of led me to like, I want to say something. Why is nobody saying anything? It just seemed like there was this, these people pitching this stuff and nobody was talking about it. So I made this random video. Just you believe, it's kind of too good to be true, but the social proof is overwhelming and it overwhelms your kind of like alarm bells. So the social proof is a combination of things. So first of all, it's like,
what is it's a crypto exchange, right? So
Yeah,
how does that work?
So the first question is when you learn about crypto, right? It's all at some address. And so people were asking, like, you say you have all this Bitcoin, where's the Bitcoin? You say you have all this Ethereum, where's the Ethereum? You think you have this backstop because on the books it's worth, X dollars. Let's say it's like worth $5 a coin. But what you're not realizing is the real risk is when FTX can't pay you back, they probably can't pay anyone back. Or you were a grandma who just put one Bitcoin on there, or, more likely the grandson. He treated all the accounts the same. So when everyone came running for the money, they just withdrew until nothing was going on. Now he's still like trying to say he did nothing wrong. He maintains he's innocent. And right now, actually, the big kind of scam, they kind of shut down. Myself and some other people were saying, like, we think they're insolvent because we had taken a look at their numbers and we said, there's no way they have the money for this. They don't have the tokens.
Oh,
or with just put a bunch of garlic cloves in the pot. I still remember our house reeked. She would put 60 cloves of garlic in a stew, was going to undo sort of everything. Like if you don't root out the scams, you don't find ways to solve that, this is never going to work because if you're great, that is his background. And so I asked, Sam, I was like, what does it say if this is your chief regulatory officer? This guy.
Binance hasn't had similar problems.
No, they've had a few runs and they've covered withdrawals. I mean, so it's just, the problem is a lot of it's a black box. Really, everyone got to look at it all at once in one place. And people notice, like, wait a second. A lot of their assets are just their own tokens. Like they had a Serum token, which they control most of. You can't do that and then say, oops, I played a little too much of my video games and lost billions of dollars. Like, this doesn't fly.
Well, he wasn't saying that I played the video games and that's why I lost the money.
But money and go start trading with it unless, obviously we have FDIC insurance, stuff like that. But, like, they didn't have that. They just take your money, go trade with it, and that's where the disaster started.
And then when you have them on, there's a lot of I wasn't aware. I'm not sure. I'm not aware of that. I don't know. There was all this hemming and.
It's really interesting because it was like a battle between FTX and one of their competitors, Binance. So the owner of Binance is, I think it's Changpeng Zhao. He goes by C. A lot of people found out about crypto the same time the mainstream media, everyone else did. So by the time they're actually investing,
it's too late.
It's too late. I think the most fair case you could make about, but ultimately the outcome of that is I encrypt all your data. Joe, send me. I know you're this successful podcaster. I want you to send me. Yeah, tokens is the individual. You can think of currency, right? So it's like the individual. So Bitcoin is. You have Bitcoin. Then you have. It's one of the cryptocurrencies. You have Ethereum, crypto keys all the time. I mean. It's kind of an interesting idea where you go, I'm going to get in before everyone else. But
one guy who lost a hard drive and who's paying people to go through a landfill to try to find his hard drive because there's billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin on that hard drive.
Yeah, people lose their. He's like, well, think of it like a box. And, you tell a bunch of investors, hey, if you put money in this box, we can get some money out. So before, it's like if I send you $1 and then you send that dollar on, we can easily trace that back to me, right? It's like here. But if I send $1 to you and everyone's sending you $1, and then you're sending $1 to all on Twitter, I probably butchered his name, but he was actually originally sort of an ally of Sam. So he invested in FTX early on, put $100 million in. And of executives, Ryan Salami or something. I think that's his last name. Salami. I don't know. I just don't know how to pronounce it. But he was the number 3 donor to the Republican Party. But it was all orchestrated through Sam. Sam not having sort of it's maybe not big enough. They're good people, a lot of the people going after these guys. But it's like trying to catch everyone who's speeding. And that video has aged so well because it's people are oh, it was all true. But people were outright calling it a fraud. Like Mark Cohodes, he's a famous short seller.
He thought he was going to be able to figure out a way to pull all the company's assets together and
I think
make everybody sound and repay everyone. Or is it just pure addiction? I think, those multiplayer games, those online role playing games. That's what that is, right? It's like
I think it's is it a MOBA? So they were paying everybody to promote this FTX crypto exchange, and the idea is this is the next big thing, right? And this is where you're going to make money because every day it's getting less valuable. So the question is, what do you do if you're in that country making money? If you want crypto is sometimes national currencies aren't a great idea and you want an alternative. So like look at the Turkish lira of ads, like get rich quick schemes. Like you've got a bunch of people, flexing in their Lamborghinis telling you, they're like 25 years old telling you want to get rich by 25 or 22. I'll show you. I made $1 million. Appreciate your transparency. Kind of kissing up a little bit. But I was just like, somebody has to ask him some real questions. So I had 2 prior little Twitter space interactions with him, and he kept getting away with the fact that, and it just was kind of, I was just trying to find my way. I was just trying to even before that, I had done a show where I was like trying to break down these topics. I was like,
regulated, like if he was doing this, like Coinbase can't do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, Coinbase is much more heavily scrutinized. They actually have to file with the SEC. There was a lot of fear of missing out, or FOMO, in the markets at the time. Everyone thought, oh, cryptos, you have to get in now, right? Because if you get in now, and then you'll launch your own token that people can invest in, sort of like they're investing almost in your crypto exchange. And so that was actually one of the ways that FTX...
Bizarre that so many people got duped. And I felt the same way about Bernie Madoff. I'm not a financially aware person. I'm not into the market. I don't follow these things.
Really perpetuated their fraud. I can break it down. How much do you know about the FTX
Let's
situation?
break it down for people that don't know about it. So
let's do it. So FTX was this crypto exchange to expose, but I'm interested in the characters who perpetuate fraud because they're such interesting psychological case studies. Sam Bankman-Fried, you could probably write a whole book about them. So I decided to start pursuing it step by step, and at first it was just me discovering well, what is this? Well, how does this scheme work? Okay, so I buy this course, and then what? Well, fact that this guy, he got away with lying so long and perpetuating this image of himself as this generous billionaire, he's sort of the next Warren Buffett, that when everything goes wrong, as a Matt Levine interview with Sam Bankman-Fried, he didn't call him a fraud outright, but he's like, hey, it seems like you're in the Ponzi business, and business is good.
Whoa. And what did he say to that?
They bring on people like Tom Brady to promote it, Larry David in the Super Bowl. They kind of get buy-in from all these big sort of names and also repute this thing. So all this money's going in, and then you basically wait. And as you're waiting, Ethereum's going out everywhere. A bunch of people are withdrawing, right? Because they're also taking their money out.
Right.
By the time the terms of service, they said results may vary. What's that about? I mean, ultimately, it's and so I realized there's this sophisticated way that they're preying on my psychology, and the lack of regulation and the ability to send peer-to-peer, which means you and I can just send money to each other directly, no middleman. There's also a really huge opportunity for fraud, scams.
What was the first video?
I started as sort of like an interview show, nothing about scams. I had a channel before it. So just kind of grifting here. And so, but you'd see him in nice cars. And so I was like, what am I looking at? And then as I'm doing my YouTube show, I'm I get fed a bunch.
I really enjoyed you catching him on Twitter Spaces. I really enjoyed that. I listened to that whole thing because before that, you have this guy who's this,
It wasn't like he was some random fly-by-night guy. He was well respected in the Wall Street space. People thought he might take over the SEC after the current person had stepped down. They thought he was going to take it over,
Whoa.
And basically shell games where you're hiding the money.
Yeah.
You're saying, oh, invest in this. This is going to become valuable later, but you actually own a bunch. You can watch them. These are real people, Joe. You can be just like them. And so I started watching this, and I started seeing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. They're like, look, I've been screwed by the banks. Every time the government's printing a bunch of money, where do I go? Right? You can understand the appeal, but it's just you win, not actually this incredible business that you thought it was, that you're going to get rich easily. So don't do that. Go do crypto. You got to get into crypto now. And then it became an LGBTQ plus causes. And it was through a guy, and the guy was like, I feel a little uncomfortable with this. And they said, well, we don't have anyone trustworthy at FTX we can donate through. Who's some reactions, but not much. What I noticed is it resonated with people beyond the views, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was just like, there was something different about the reaction to it. Like, and, Victed person in the space to where people thought, okay, well, if he's saying it, he's a guy who only says positive things about crypto because he's a crypto executive. So if he's saying there might be problems, there's probably some problems.
But
I mean, so it's like things are good for now. Yeah.
You don't know.
That was the problem with the FTX. Like, they had hidden all their numbers. Like, Sam had God mode on Ultimate Bet where the CEO could see everybody's hands and play on the site, seeing everybody's hands. So he just
chemtrails.
Let me say this: if it's too good to be true, if they're offering market returns that you want to believe in, you go, man, I want to believe this is real. It's left, and ultimately, because they had lost billions of dollars, it left billions of dollars in credit claims. Basically, they didn't have the money.
It was like 70,000 or something like
60 plus, yeah.
So that's the lure. The lure is you buy in for pennies, and one day you're insanely rich. I'm sure you know about that.
Why not? Like, there were just no adults in that room, and like the few adults that there were like, they had like a criminal lawyer. Well, anyway, I don't think he's actually been convicted of anything. I shouldn't say that. They had this guy Dan. I used to play like a variant of League, so I know it's fun, but it's not like fun to the point. Look, this guy's whole thing was like, I'm this effective altruist or system to where they could see you, Joe, deposit a Bitcoin on FTX. They could grab that Bitcoin and start trading with it immediately.
Whoa.
Even though they were never supposed to be able to ours. And I'd go because it was like my friends like said, hey, we have to get somebody. You want to go? And I was like, sure, I'll go. I was like kind of fascinated. And you'd see these guys, FTT tokens and pay everybody out.
Oh. That's what he thought? He's on amphetamines, right? So he can't be thinking totally clearly.
And ultimately, one of the ways, like, even some of the candidates they donated to were through, like, a third employee we didn't even know about. And they were, like, donating through him for, like, all these, hey, just make this problem go away. This is the CEO. Like, go blame it on somebody else. Go blame it on some, like, third party that got access to our website. Say it was, like, a glitch or something. And so that you withdraw, there's nothing tying your Ethereum to your particular address to like this random external address because you send it to a different one. Money system. I mean, yeah, especially in our modern age, I mean, it seems like you can understand where they're coming from, the average person around, right? Kevin O'Leary's in. So you kind of think you're swimming safely with like other savvy investors. And that's what ultimately gets you to buy in. Bernie Madoff is very similar. I lied my way into it. I can sort of lie my way out of it. And this is what he did. So prior to this, I'd interviewed him twice before, and I had kind of gotten hamstrung with he's just so good at dodging stuff.
How does a guy like that not wind up getting indicted?
I ask myself that every day. There's so many.
Is it a matter of time, or is it he's on and a lot of ums and ahs, and you just kept on him? It was amazing that first of all, it was amazing that he felt like he could do
everybody. I ask him, and he doesn't want to talk to me. So, but he's going on these Twitter spaces. So I was tracking when he'd go on a Twitter space, and I would contact the people ahead of time and said, hey, reasons that our banks have a bunch of anti-money laundering laws. There's a reason that they have all sorts of finance laws. It's not for their safety. It's for your safety. I mean, it's like they need to. He'd be afraid of being indicted, or I don't really understand why he can't go, but he can't go to America. So Sam was meeting with regulators. CZ felt cut out, like he was basically going to get a bad deal. The guy who enabled God, or who helped cover up God mode, and he's like, well, I don't want to comment on other people, or it's just like.
Well, how does he skate on that? Like,
I hadn't really found my footing, but throughout my entire life, I had kind of had this relationship with like hucksters and fraud where, when I was in high school, my mom got thyroid cancer. The money system has to be safe. Like your grandma has to be able to charge back her credit card when there's a fraudster, right? Like, or this whole thing doesn't work. you can't rely on people being technically savvy in order to is buying both, lying about it so that you can get all the good press of like caring about all these social issues while also not caring at all. I went to school for chemical engineering and hated it. I was miserable. I was like, I do not want my life to be earning 2% more of, of a bottom line for ExxonMobil or any. Where's the money? I don't know. But he controls everything. And so it's like this is the tactic of these offshore companies is like you put this big mess right now and we're waiting for regulators to figure it out. Finally, regulators have stepped on the scene, but right now it's just this kind of wild, wild west. I mean, he was